Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel BD Business World, where we learn about business concepts, terminologies, and much more. Today's topic is very interesting and it will make you think when you are making decisions under uncertainty. Have you ever wondered why people make irrational decisions sometimes? Why we fear losing money more than we enjoy it when we gain it? Or why gamblers keep playing even after big losses? Well, it all comes down to something called prospect theory, a powerful concept in behavioral economics. So let's dive into the details of prospect theory. Prospect theory, introduced by psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky in 1979, explains how people make decisions under uncertainty. Unlike traditional economic theories that assume humans are rational, prospect theory shows that we weigh losses and gains differently. Losing feels worse than feeling great about an equivalent gain. It challenges the traditional expected utility theory, which assumes that individuals make rational choices to maximize expected value. And instead of weighing all options logically, we rely on mental shortcuts. And these often lead to predictable biases. Prospect theory is based on three key principles, that is, loss aversion, diminishing sensitivity, and probability distortion. All three principles can be seen from the value function plotted here. So on x-axis, we have the outcome, which indicates actual outcome, which can either be gain or loss. And on y-axis, we have the perceived value. The curve here is S-shaped, indicating the magnitude of perceived value. The curve has steeper slope for perceived pain versus perceived gain. That is, for the same amount of loss and gain, the first red and the green dots respectively on the x, the perceived value for loss on y-axis is very higher than the perceived value of gain. So you can see that instead of treating gains and losses equally, our brains follow an S-shaped curve. Let's dive into the details of the three main principles. Loss aversion. Loss aversion is when people experience the pain of losses more intensely than the pleasure of equivalent gains. Essentially, losses loom larger than gains. This explains why individuals often avoid risks that could lead to losses even when the potential benefits outweigh them. For example, someone may be hesitant to relocate to a new city due to financial and social losses, that is, the cost of relocating or losing your friends, losing your social network, despite better job opportunities and better schools. This principle also explains why investors panic sell during market downturns to avoid more losses, whereas gamblers chase losses. The second one is diminishing sensitivity. The psychological impact of gains and losses decreases as their size increases. For instance, losing $10 versus 20 feels more significant than losing 1000 versus 1010. The value function flattens at the extremes, illustrating that as gains or losses grow, their additional impact on the perception diminishes, and that is what we call as diminishing sensitivity. The third one is probability distortion. So people tend to overestimate the small probabilities. For example, likelihood of winning the lottery and underestimate large probabilities. For example, the risk of a car accident. This explains why individuals both buy lottery tickets and insurance. So essentially, our brains handle probabilities in a non-linear way. So while making decisions, these principles are applied unintentionally, and that's where the reference dependence come in the picture. Decisions are not made in absolute terms, but rather in comparison to a reference point. For example, current wealth or expectations, and gains or losses are evaluated relative to this reference rather than an absolute outcome. The S-shaped value function of prospect theory highlights these behavioral biases, demonstrating how the perceived magnitude of losses and gains differs, ultimately shaping the real-world decision making. So essentially, we are risk averse when it comes to gains. So we would rather take a sure $50 than a 50% chance of winning $100. But we are risk seeking when it comes to losses. That is, we would rather take a gamble to avoid a definite $50 loss, even if it means risking more. This is why people buy lottery tickets while also purchasing insurance, as we handle gains and losses differently. So, next time when you are making decisions under uncertainty, think about the prospect theory. Prospect theory isn't just about investing, it affects our daily decisions in ways we don't even realize. So, here are some terminologies and real life examples associated with it. The first one is endowment effect. Endowment effect is when people value items more when they give them up rather than when they acquire them. Have you ever noticed how people demand more money to sell something they own than they would be willing to pay to buy the same item? That's because we value things more once we possess them. And this is why it is so hard to declutter or even sell a car, even when we don't need it anymore. The next one is sunk cost fallacy. People continue to invest in something even though it is not working because they don't want to experience the loss. So, sunk cost is a cost that has already incurred. You have already paid for it. For example, you hired a person, invested time and money to train them for 3 months, but the person isn't performing. And instead of looking for a better candidate, you continue with the same, hoping that he or she would do better. This happens because we hate accepting losses, even when moving on would be a smarter choice. Next, we have status quo bias. Status quo bias is where people tend to stick with what they have rather than making a change. People stick with the same insurance, gym membership, bank, or restaurant, even if better options exist. Why? Because change feels risky or our brain prefers to avoid uncertainty. Then we have the consumer demand and price sensitivity. Have you ever been more upset about a price increase than happy about a discount? That's because we feel the pain of paying more much stronger than the joy of saving. And that is why businesses carefully plan how they increase prices. These psychological biases shape our decisions every single day. The more we understand them, the smarter choices we can make. So, what we have learned so far? Some of the key concepts in behavioral economics, that is, prospect theory, value function, loss aversion, diminishing sensitivity, and probability distortion. We also discussed about some real life examples of these concepts. We fear losses more than we enjoy gains. We make different choices depending on how things are framed and uncertainty, and how being aware of these biases can help us make better financial, business, and life decisions. Now that you know what can affect your decision making, how are you going to use this knowledge? Did it help you? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel BD Business World for more insights into such topics. See you all in the next video, and until then, let's conquer the world.